Hello string players, hope you're all doing well. Last week I got multiple requests to talk about coordination between the left and the right hands and what are some ways we can practice to get good clean coordination and play passages with good articulation and good sound. So today I'm going to talk about a few ways you can practice, and make sure you watch to the end of this video because the last 3 exercises that I'll give you will not only help with your coordination, but it'll also help you with speed and dexterity in your left hand. My name is Langerman, and if you are new to this channel, go ahead and hit that subscribe button and notification bell so that you don't miss my weekly lesson video. If you would like a mini version of these lessons, or if you would like to listen to me practicing and see how I organize my practice, head over to Instagram and follow me at Violinna. It's the same spelling as the name of this channel. So let's get started. So ideally, the left hand will be a little bit ahead of the bow arm in order for it to sound like it's happening simultaneously. So now let's go over some common problems that happen. So if you're playing a passage and you find yourself making some sounds like or something like that, clearly there is a coordination problem. And first thing you have to do is figure out if it's a bow problem or a left hand problem. So I'll just talk about the 3 most common ones that happen. The first one is the bow switches much too quick before the left hand is ready with the new note. In this case, you'll either hear 2 notes like you just heard, or you're gonna hear a fuzzy sound. You hear? So what was happening there is my finger wasn't quite all the way down yet when I started playing the new note. And that one is very common. The next issue that's very common is the opposite. The left hand gets too far ahead, or the bow is slow to meet the bow change. So this time, my left hand was arriving too early. And the third most common problem is with string crossings. So one thing that happens is that the bow, say we have a D and A. One problem is that the bow starts playing the new string note before the switch to the new string has completed. I'm exaggerating. So it's important that we switch to the new string before playing the new note. So now we're going to do a few exercises to correct some of these. And for our example, we're going to use Dont Etude from his Opus 35. So Dont 3, it starts like this. And so on. So it goes on for about 2 pages. I'm not going to play the whole thing. So the first exercise is going to be playing double stops whenever you have 2 adjacent notes that are on separate strings. So for example, in the beginning we have, then we have E and B. So E and B are on 2 separate strings, so I will play them together. So every time I have 2 notes that are next to each other and on separate strings, I will play them together. doing this is for two things. Number one, it gets the bow arm level right in between those two strings in order to make for the transition smoothly with the bow, so it's not rigid like this. The second thing, really important, that it does, practicing like this, is that it gets the next note in the left hand, the next finger, it puts the finger down in advance, one note in advance. That way you don't get the fuzzy sound when, for example, if I play this with my left hand falling behind a little bit. You heard that? My first finger for B wasn't all the way down yet, so it had a little fuzzy sound in the beginning. So this is why we're going to practice it. First finger down. And then, if you want to take out the double stop, put the note B down and play. So my new note on the new string is already there a little bit ahead. That way I know I will get a smooth transition. So that when I'm making the switch with the bow, I'm not worried about the left hand. I already put the finger down one note earlier. So that's a great way you can practice this. Okay, exercise number 2 is open strings. So whenever you have strange string crossing patterns that are unusual, there are some of them in here. We're going to take out the left hand and just practice open strings. And then the next step is going to be to do the left hand fingers over here on the side of the violin while playing the open strings. And when you're doing this, see if you can think a little bit ahead like we just did when I said to anticipate with the left hand a little bit whenever you have a string change coming up. Okay, and now let's do it as written. Anticipate. Actually, let me stand in a different angle so you can see. I'm going to actually change the angle of the camera so that you can see what my left hand is doing in relation to the bow, how it's anticipating. So that's the idea, and then you can pick up the tempo as it gets easy. So the next exercise we're going to do is we're going to make pauses before we have a string change. We can play a little faster this time. Pause, pause. Okay, so, oh, I forgot to do a pause at the end there between A and E string. So the idea is to practice getting your bow to the new string before you play that new note to take care of, so that doesn't happen, okay? Okay, so the next exercise, I'm not going to talk too much about it in detail, but it's about spiccato, because in spiccato you have to anticipate everything a little bit sooner than when you play detache like I just did. So if I play this with spiccato, it's very important that with the bow I get to that new string at the end of the final note on the first strings. At the end of the E, before I have to switch to B, my arm has to switch to the A string and then switch to the next string at the end of B. Okay, so that's just a very important thing. Also, the left hand will also have to anticipate just a little bit more because we're focusing on the very front of the note. That's all you're going to hear with spiccato. The way you play the very beginning of the note is what you're going to hear. So with detache, if I have a little bit of that fuzzy sound, I can quickly cover it and finish playing the rest of the note. With spiccato, you don't get away with that because you're only going to hear that very initial sound. So it's very important that the left hand is really, really anticipating and really knows what it's doing. And actually, I'm not going to go into too much detail with spiccato because I have actually a separate video on it, how to learn spiccato, how to practice it, and you can click on the link up here if you want to look at that in more detail. So now I'll just give you a few more exercises. So an excellent exercise you can do, this is more for evenness between the notes, is to practice everything slurred. And if you have the opposite, if you're practicing a passage that's slurred and you want to get better evenness in the left hand, is to practice it separate. So you kind of do the opposite. So I'll slur 8 notes in a bow. You can also do 4 in a bow, or even 2. But 4 and 8, those would give you results in something like this. It will even out the left hand. The next 3 exercises I'm going to give you are going to help you also speed it up. It's going to help you with dexterity, and it's going to help make your left hand a little bit lighter. So the first exercise is going to be chunking, and for that we're going to do rhythms like dotted rhythms. So for example, or reverse dotted. So the 2 notes that are next to each other that are very close, you want to make them as close together as you can, and it's going to leave you with no choice but to make sure that your left hand is ahead. And let's do an even more effective version of this where you hold the first note of each group of 4 and then make the others quick. And then you can do the same thing holding the second note in each group. It's a little trickier because it's the up bow. The up bow notes are tricky and they don't fall on the main beat. Okay, and then you can do the same thing with the third of each group and the fourth of each group in a similar way. Okay, the next exercise, really good for helping with speed. We'll play each note 4 times. First, let's figure out what speed do we want this at. Let's say, for example, my goal is so let's say I want to do that. Let's say that's my goal. So I'll play each note 4 times at this speed. And then we'll do each note 3 times. This one is a little tricky because each group alternates bow directions. And then we'll do each one 2 times. And then you can try it as written. Okay? That kind of helps propel it forward a little bit. But for practicing like this, at least to start with, don't do the whole piece right away like this. You know, take one measure, then take another measure, then put them together. Okay, and finally, the last exercise to take it even further is, it's similar to what we did with chunking, but what we're going to do is play the first 4 notes plus the first note of the next group. So it's going to be 5 notes in total. Really quickly, all chunked together. Then starting with the last note that I just played, which is part of the next group. I'll play that next group, plus one note, the note that's going to start the following group. So what I'm doing essentially is I'm creating a link. We have, this etude is organized into 16th notes, so you have groups of 4. But I'm taking the first note of the following group and linking it to the previous one. So let's do several links like that. And then what you can do next, after this gets a little bit easier, let's take 8. We'll now do 8 notes, and then we will do the first note of beat 3. So that's 9 notes in total. So now, the reason this really helps is because by doing this, your mind starts thinking in bigger groups. So it's no longer thinking taka 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 taka. When I attached 8 notes, now I'm thinking taka 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 taka. And it's actually much easier to execute it, because if my brain is thinking a larger picture all at once, it makes life much easier here, and also everything becomes more fluent. It becomes part of the muscle memory quicker that way. Also, you know, you don't want to practice this thinking taka 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 taka. You can't think that fast. It's going to tire you out very quickly, and it's going to be very difficult to memorize it. So that's why this last exercise is very, very effective. Okay, so that's it for today. I hope these exercises are helpful for you. Let me know in the comments below what you think, and tell me what you're practicing. And if this has been helpful for you, don't forget to thumbs up this video. If you didn't like this video, you can click thumbs down. Just make sure to click it twice, okay? And share this video with a friend or a colleague. And I will see you next week. Happy practicing!